Well, hey, everybody, this is Robert, and I appreciate you listening to today's podcast. Well, last week we got some really good news from Nigeria, where it's reported that the parasitic disease lymphatic filariasis was declared eliminated from 2 states in Africa's most populous country. Joining me now to talk about lymphatic filariasis and the success in Nigeria is Gregory Nolan, Ph.D. Dr. Nolan is an epidemiologist for health programs with the Carter Center in Atlanta, Georgia. Dr. Nolan, welcome to the show, sir.
Thanks so much, Robert.
Now, the Carter Center made this wonderful announcement about lymphatic filariasis being eliminated from Plateau and Nasarawa, I hope I said that right, states.
Spot on.
Okay, but before we get into the specifics of this, a lot of listeners may not have much idea about lymphatic filariasis, what it is, and et cetera, because it's not found in the U.S., and it is truly a tropical disease. So, Dr. Nolan, what is lymphatic filariasis, and how does someone contract it?
Right, absolutely. The disease, lymphatic filariasis, it actually was found in the U.S. A long time ago, so we could say that it's no longer found in the U.S., which is a pretty interesting historical anecdote. It was found in Charleston in the late 1800s and early 1900s. So that's an interesting piece of parasitology trivia that most folks probably don't know, but lymphatic filariasis is really most commonly known as elephantiasis. It's one of the most disfiguring diseases imaginable. The disease is caused by tiny parasitic worms that are transmitted from person to person by mosquitoes. And these worms inhabit the lymphatic system where they cause a dysfunction, and that can lead to irreversible and really grotesque swelling of the legs and other extremities, as well as scrotal swelling in men. So it's really one of the most disabling and debilitating diseases that there is.
Right. Now, you talked about elephantiasis, and that's the main manifestation of the disease, but are there other ones? And this is pretty much, you wouldn't classify this as an acute infection. It'd be more of a chronic infection.
Indeed. So in endemic areas, individuals may be exposed from early on in life, but it's really not until perhaps teenage or adolescent years, or even later early adulthood, that the signs of this infection would start to manifest. So it really takes a number of exposures over a number of years for persons to start to develop signs of the disease. But unfortunately, the symptoms that I've described, the lymphedema, which is the swelling in the extremities, is really an irreversible condition. So individuals who may live in an endemic area continue to be infected, but their conditions, you can control the morbidity that develops, but unfortunately for lymphedema, there's really no way to reverse the manifestations when someone has been infected.
Right, and elephantiasis can also get secondary bacterial infections with it too, right?
Right, absolutely, and so that's one of the main strategies in terms of caring for individuals who will suffer the effects of elephantiasis throughout their life, is really providing good hygienic care for individuals, making sure that they know how to properly wash, dry, and aerate affected limbs, and in order to prevent the secondary bacterial infections that you described. Absolutely.
Right. Now, how big of a problem is it worldwide? Is there a number of cases that you can throw out there?
Yeah, so at the start of global efforts to eliminate this disease, it's estimated that there are about 1 billion people in 80 countries at risk of this disease. So an enormous population at risk globally.
Now, obviously it's a problem in Nigeria. That's what we're talking about today. But what other countries do they find large amounts of cases? Where it's endemic?
So Nigeria is actually currently the second most endemic country, but India is by far the most endemic country, along with Indonesia. Those two countries account for a significant burden of this disease globally.
Yeah. Now, this, of course, is a significant achievement, but there's only been elimination in 2 of the states. I don't know how many states there are in Nigeria. There's probably dozens. But this is
36.
36, right. Now,
36
so,
capitals here.
but this is still considered a big success. How come?
Well, just this year, populations who are now free from this disease, Nigeria being most populous country in Africa, the 2 states that we're talking about currently is home to approximately 7 million people. So, that's much larger than a number of other countries within Africa. So, if these 2 states were considered on the same playing field, you might consider that in terms of population levels, in other places these could be, at country level, considered free of this disease.
Right. I'd also think that whatever strategies that were used for these 2 states, why couldn't that work elsewhere too?
Absolutely, and that's really what's remarkable about this achievement. This program started in 2000, so 17 years ago. This program was launched, and this was really at the birth of the modern era to eliminate lymphatic filariasis globally. And really, this program was started as a demonstration effort that elimination could be achieved in one of the most endemic places on Earth.
Yeah, it's great stuff. Now, the Carter Center didn't do this alone. You partner with some other organizations to achieve this. Dr. Nolan, who are the partners that you teamed up with to achieve this?
So, elimination efforts for lymphatic filariasis depend on, firstly, on donation of drugs from several pharmaceutical companies. So, 2 drugs in particular, one called ivermectin or Mectizan, is donated by Merck. A second drug, albendazole, is donated by GSK. And in certain places, another drug called DEC is now donated by a Japanese company called Asahi. And so certainly a lot of the credit needs to go to these companies who provide these medicines free to elimination efforts globally. In thinking about other partners, the Carter Center directly works with the ministries of health at both the federal level and at the state level within Nigeria. And so our work is done in support of their efforts. But then we also have to bear in mind the individuals who distribute these drugs within the communities to interrupt transmission of this disease. So in Nigeria, within the 2 states, Plateau and Nasarawa alone, there are more than 16,000 community volunteers who distribute drugs to their community. And so it really is a team effort across a number of organizations and partners.
Sure. Now, so I take it that the actions taken to achieve this was, and correct me if I'm wrong, mass drug administration, basically, right?
That's correct.
Yeah. And is mosquito control part of the effort also, or?
So we consider there are really 2 complementary interventions. As you say, mass drug administration is the primary intervention against this disease, essentially providing these medications to affected communities that kills the larval form of the parasite that circulates in the blood of individuals infected with this disease, thereby breaking transmission of this disease within communities when the drug is given over a number of years. Current recommendations from WHO are approximately 5 years. But in endemic areas like Nigeria, it took closer to 10 years of annual mass drug administration. But in addition, vector control, and primarily in the form of bed nets. Typically, we think of bed nets being distributed for malaria, but in Africa and in a number of other places, in fact, the same Anopheles mosquito that transmits malaria is also the mosquito vector for lymphatic filariasis. And so the nets that are being distributed in the name of malaria control actually have dual benefit for control and elimination of lymphatic filariasis by providing protection against mosquito bites.
Excellent. So how did you and your team confirm that transmission had actually been interrupted? So
the World Health Organization guidelines suggest that once mass drug administration has been executed throughout an at-risk area, and surveys are conducted to determine that mass drug administration can stop. After that stop MDA decision is made, then a period of 5 years that's called post-treatment surveillance begins. And so post-treatment surveillance consists of 2 surveys that are done within the targeted area. And so, for example, in Plateau and Nasarawa, mass drug administration was stopped across all of the areas of Plateau and Nasarawa in 2012. And so in 2014, and then also in 2016 and spanning into 2017, we conducted surveys across the entire 2-state area. In 2014 and 15, we sampled more than 1,200 children, and we found only a few of them who still had any evidence of remnant infection. And then by the time of the 2016-2017 surveys, where we tested more than 14,000 children, we found none of the children showed any evidence of infection with this parasite. So that gives us very strong evidence that transmission has been interrupted.
Fantastic. Now, of course, there's still the risk of this returning if people let their guards down.
Absolutely. So Plateau and Nasarawa states are the first 2 states within Nigeria to have interrupted this disease, and so that's why it's such a milestone for these states and for the country as a whole. But the other remaining states within Nigeria still are continuing to distribute mass drug administration. Most of states have scaled up, most of areas have scaled up, but there's certainly no guarantee that the surrounding states have accomplished transmission interruption. And so there's until that happens, there's absolutely a patent risk of introduction into Plateau and Nasarawa states. There's also the risk that there could be some places we're missing, some foci of local transmission that just was somehow escaped our surveillance efforts. And so not only the risk of importation, but also a small risk that the disease could flare up again within these areas. So we certainly have not let the guard down. We still continue vigorous surveillance efforts for this disease, really until the entire country has eliminated this disease.
All right. Okay. Well, let me go ahead and close with this. The Carter Center is going to continue mass drug administration throughout the country. So is there anything else that you'd like to mention that I missed in this interview?
Yeah, so a couple things, and let me clarify. So the Carter Center, as I said, there are 36 states plus a capital territory within Nigeria. Carter Center assists with lymphatic filariasis elimination efforts in 9 of those states. And so we've interrupted in the 2 that we're talking about today. But Carter Center's efforts now turn towards the 7 states in the southeast and south-south region of the country, where we just started scaling up treatments for lymphatic filariasis elimination in 2014. So we still have several more years of mass drug administration before we can even begin to think about surveys to determine whether it's safe to stop MDA, and then, of course, the period of post-treatment surveillance, the 5-year period after MDA has stopped. And then also the work that's being done by the other partners who are supporting the remaining states within Nigeria. So Carter Center specifically and the other partners, we still have a lot of work left to do in Nigeria, but again, the main message of the news that we're sharing is that elimination is possible. It is possible in one of the most endemic places on Earth. So there's really a bright outlook for the program.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you, Dr. Gregory Nolan, for your time and expertise. And you guys keep up the great work. You're doing good stuff. Appreciate it.
Great. Thanks so much.
You bet.